All right, good afternoon, everyone. We're going to begin with today's special meeting of our City Council. There's a single agenda item on today's agenda. It is information discussion of the Fillmore and 4th Avenue RFP. First thing we need to do is call the roll of the City Council. Mr. City Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Councilman DeCiccio. Here. Councilwoman Gallego. Here. Councilman Gates.
Here.
Councilman Nowakowski. Councilman Pastor.
Here.
Councilman Waring. Here. Councilwoman Williams.
Here.
Vice Mayor Valenzuela.
Here.
Mayor Stanton.
Here. This is a unique meeting of the City Council. Here is how I propose that we proceed. First, that we will hear from our professional city staff, Paul Blue and Chris Mackey, followed by a short review of the procurement process led by our city attorney, Mr. Brad Holm. And then we'll hear from the RFP respondents, and then we'll see if there's any public comment at the end of it. I will give the opportunity for members of this council to ask questions at the end of each section. So after staff presentation, I'll turn to the council and see if they have any questions. After a review of the procurement process, I'll turn to staff and see if they have any questions. And then at the end of the presentation by the various RFP respondents, I'll turn to the council to see if there are any questions. Is there any disagreement as the order of business, how we should proceed here today? Okay, with that, I'll hand it over to Mr. Paul Blue, our Deputy City Manager, and Chris Mackey, our Community Economic Development Director, for a short staff presentation. Mr. Blue.
Mayors and members of the council, Chris is going to provide a brief set of framing slides that articulate how we acquired the property, where it is, and the process that proceeded to today. So, Chris?
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. We're here today to talk to you about the West Fillmore property. As you will notice on the slide above, these are properties that were acquired by the City of Phoenix for redevelopment over approximately a decade, and this represents 7.4 acres of land approximately. In front of you, you see the RFP schedule and the members of the panel. We worked as a team to conduct a request for proposal, bringing our professional recommendations forward to DAR on February 4th. Came forward to City Council for authorization on March 25th. We issued the RFP formally on April 30th, and our panel interviews were scheduled on April 7th. And during our panel interview process, we did interview 4 of the finalists for the RFP respondents. On August 26th, at the recommendation of the the public committee, we posted Trammell Crow as the winner of as the recommended proposer for that RFP. Our panel members existed of a wide array of professional city staff and public staff. Murray Boss with our IDA. We selected them, of course, they were part of the acquisition process of the West Fillmore parcel. Cindy Dash, which was our community member. Chris Kowalski with our Planning and Development Department. Caroline Lobo, who represented our architect background. Keon Montgomery with our Housing Department. Rabah Syed of my team on the Community and Economic Development. Mark Singerman with the Rockefeller Development Corporation. And Mark Stratz, who is a local broker who does a lot of projects here in downtown. In front of you, you'll see a very broad view of the downtown market with the West Fillmore site highlighted, just to give you kind of a visual representation of where the site exists today. And then up close, the 2 yellow boxes that you see on the left that are highlighted, those are the parcels, the combined parcels that we acquired over the decade period of time. And then you see it in a representation off to the right, just to give you, again, a representation of where those parcels are located. And that is the end of our presentation. And at this time, we'd be happy to take any questions you might have.
Thank you very much, Ms. Mackey. Paul, anything else from your end?
No, I believe this is the context we intended to provide.
I'll now turn to members of the council. Do any council members have questions for Mr. Blue or Ms. Mackey?
Mayor?
Councilman Williams, please.
I just have a couple questions. Did you have a pre-bid conference?
Mayor, Councilwoman Williams, yes, we did have a pre-proposal conference.
And as part of that, did you explain the entire process as well as the project?
Mayor, Councilwoman Williams, yes, we explained the entire process, the project itself, and walked everyone through that timeline of how that would happen.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Councilman DeCiccio?
Just a couple things. One, that's an interesting question on the pre-bid. We have a list of all the individuals who are at the pre-bid conference, and then is that where everybody's in the same room? How does
Mayor-
that work?
Mayor Councilman DeCiccio, that's correct. Our not a requirement, but our request is that anyone that's going to bid attends the pre-proposal conference so that they can hear everything firsthand. It's not a requirement, but it is something that we recommend.
And do you have a date of when that occurred?
Yes, sir. Our pre-proposal meeting was on May 18th of 2015.
And then, when was the first time that this concept was even brought out to the public? I think it was we heard it was back in February or January, or you'd had done some contact.
Mayor, Councilman DeCiccio, we actually worked with the Downtown Phoenix Inc. and Downtown Phoenix Partnership to conduct a whole series of community meetings that started in the fall of 2014. By this time, with the council's approval, a site had been assembled in 2014 that we felt was a sufficient mass to pursue prospective development. But we first went to the community and had a whole series of community meetings to discuss the land was available, what should be on the land. And so I think it became broadly familiar, at least in the downtown community. And this is principally with neighborhoods, but we invited and anyone was welcome to come who came. To discuss what are the various alternatives or options that the community would have an interest in for development of the property. Once we had collected all that community information, we then proceeded to the Downtown Aviation and Redevelopment Subcommittee to get their advice, consent, and recommendation to the full council about use and the nature of use as well as prospective criteria.
And when did that occur? Approximately.
The meeting with DAR was February 4.
Okay. And then each one of these were a public process, correct? Pretty much.
The conduct of these meetings that we had with the community were broad solicitation in as many forms as we could to encourage anybody could come who wanted to come. They were open to anyone. There was no, we made invitations broadly across the community, but we did not advertise these in the newspaper or anything like that.
So the concept of developing this property was done back in 2014?
Yes,
Initially.
Councilman DeCiccio, that is correct.
And then it was later stepped up, probably the latter part of 2014, knowing what the process generally is like here. Even talking to individuals, talking it up, making sure people are aware of it, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. And then are we going to get into the, just out of curiosity, the 29-page report at all? Is someone going to do that, or is that something that, is that a question? It is something that's going to happen later? Oh, over here. Oh, okay. I'll save it till then. Thank you.
Councilwoman Williams?
Thought of another question. On a regular basis, I know that you brief council members, especially on a subcommittee. Do we ever receive a copy of the RFP so that we actually know the details from your department?
Councilman Williams, we will almost, I am unaware of when we have provided the RFP document that will be provided to, that will be publicly dispensed to prospective bidders to anyone other than the procurement staff that is on Christine's team. So we would not take the procurement document in itself. We would, prior to going to the DAR subcommittee, brief about the nature of what is being suggested for this property, the feedback from the neighborhoods, and the proposed criteria that we would be asking the city council to consider as staff is preparing to put a solicitation out. But we do not put the solicitation itself. We don't brief the council on the specific details or the specific requirements with the city council. We get the broad term approval of the council, incorporate those into the documents, but they also have a whole wide array of requirements, expectations, details that have been historically deferred to staff by the city council.
Do you send us notices when the RFP is going to hit the street?
Mayor, Councilman Williams, my recollection is we broadly try to communicate to the council the big timeframes when things are going to occur, like proposals are being issued and final recommendation being made by the panel and the city manager's office signing off. We probably talk with the council about those two precise dates where we inform you all of when it's been on the street, so you are aware that it is in process. And then second, when the panel has acted and that staff has accepted that recommendation, and we inform you of that as well. And at that time would share the details of who the other finalists were, is a typical practice.
I know that at the airport, at least I received a letter from them that notifies us that an RFP is going out. I don't recall most of the other departments doing it, that's why I was asking the question.
I would, Mayor, Councilman Williams, I do know the airport does this. I know the Economic Development Department, because of the nature of what they're doing when they have RFPs for land. Historically, we notify the council, but I would admit not in as formal a way as the airport does it. It would typically be sharing with Penny that something is hitting the street, and Penny would share that with the council, but not generally in a formal memorandum.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councilwoman. Any other questions from City Council for Paul Blue or Chris Mackey? All right, thank you very much for your presentation. Next, I'd ask Brad Holm to lead a discussion and review of the procurement process. And Mr. Holm, you can bring up anyone else you would like to bring. Mr. Holm, our city attorney, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. As is not uncommon in solicitations of the city, we do a review if asked to consider the circumstances of the RFP. In this case, we did an initial review pursuant to allegations that were made about the RFP process. Specifically, there were allegations made of a conflict of interest, of certain undue influence, and also of a failure to follow our procurement rules. In connection with that, there was, as well known, an article published in a local paper that suggested that there was evidence in support of those allegations, and so we asked for an outside review. I hired outside counsel, Sanders and Park, to conduct the review. 2 partners in that law firm were involved in the process. One of those, Garrett Gallagher, couldn't be here today because of prior commitments, but Shanks Leonard, who sits on my right, is here to summarize the findings of the outside review. So I've asked him to take just a couple of minutes and give you a quick summary of the outside review. Mr. Lenhart.
Thank you, City Attorney. Mayor, council members, as City Attorney said, my name is Shanks Lenhart. I'm a partner at the law firm Sanders and Parks. The City Attorney asked us to review 2 issues related to the West Fillmore development RFP. The first issue was whether the city's process for recommending the award of the RFP met all the legal requirements. The second issue was whether Councilman Michael Nowakowski violated any conflict of interest laws related to that RFP. We prepared a detailed report summarizing our review, and my understanding is that the council has been provided with copies of that. We're here to provide a brief summary. I will note at the outset, and which states in our report, that our review was limited in the sense that we do not have subpoena power. And so the information that we gathered is limited to what witnesses agreed to voluntarily produce to us. That means that we were not given access to certain things that we requested. For example, we were not given access to the project files or communications of the recommended proposer, the Phoenix Fillmore Group, or likewise the second-ranked proposer, 5th and Fillmore. That said, as we noted in our report, representatives of the recommended proposer, Phoenix Fillmore, indicated that they would sign affidavits under the penalty of perjury, confirming they received no information from the councilman regarding another developer's bid. With those limitations stated, we reached the following conclusions. First, we found no evidence that the RFP process was compromised in any way. We found no evidence of undue influence or improper influence on the evaluation panel members. Notably, only one of the 8 panel members even knew that Councilman Nowakowski had some affiliation with an entity that was part of a bidding entity. The rest of the 7 panel members did not learn about that until it reached the media. The city's evaluation panel member, we interviewed each member. They all indicated that they reached a consensus decision in recommending the Phoenix Fillmore proposal, and they did so based on the merits of the proposal. One of the key factors that they indicated to us that supported their recommendation was the structure of payment to the city between the 2 competing proposals. The Phoenix Fillmore Group had a payment structure that was more money than the second-ranked proposer, and that was in 2 fixed payments. The second-ranked proposers, in comparison, offered less money and tied a portion of that money to the sale of for-sale condominiums. At the conclusion, when the award was, a recommendation of the award was announced, no protest was filed by the second-ranked proposer in accordance with the RFP criteria. The second conclusion we reached, again based on the evidence that we had access to, was that we found no evidence to suggest that a court would find Councilman Nowakowski violated any conflict of interest laws related to the RFP. The actions that we noticed and identified with respect to the councilman occurred prior to the RFP and at a time in which his employer, the Cesar Chavez Foundation, had at most only a remote interest in the RFP, as opposed to the substantial interest that is required under the conflict of interest laws. On that note, we found no evidence that there was a conflict of interest in the councilman voting both to delay the initial issuance of the RFP and then to issue the RFP. We found no evidence that the councilman passed any confidential information about the RFP to his employer. While there was a phone call between the councilman and the Cesar Chavez Foundation in early March prior to the issuance of the RFP, the content of that conversation was contained very general and basic nature that would be consistent with what the city would tell any interested developer in the project. And it was in all likelihood less detailed than what had already been published in the media about the forthcoming RFP. Lastly, we found no evidence that the councilman violated any conflict of interest laws with respect to the meeting that he took on April 6th with the second-ranked, what ultimately became the second-ranked proposer. That meeting, again, took place prior to the issuance of the RFP. We located no evidence that the councilman received any specific information about that developer's bid, for instance, the discussion of a bid price term that would have impacted the RFP. We located no evidence that any information that the councilman gained in that meeting was communicated to any other potential bidder. Again, I would note that our conclusion on this is limited by the fact that we did not get access to project emails related to the Phoenix Fillmore Group. However, as I stated at the outset, the Phoenix Fillmore Group has offered to sign sworn statements indicating that they did not receive any such information from the councilman. That said, we concluded in our report that the councilman did not disclose at this April 6th meeting that his employer was looking into the RFP. That was information that he had at the time of that meeting. And for the sake of complete transparency, we believe the better practice would have been for the councilman to have notified that developer that he at least had that information and that his employer may be looking into the project. That being said, we did not believe that that rose to the level of a conflict of interest that violated the Arizona State conflict of interest laws. And I'm happy to address any questions the mayor or council has.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Lenhart. Vice Mayor, are you still on the phone? Vice Mayor?
Yeah, I'm on the phone.
Did you have questions of either Mr. Holm or Mr. Lenhart?
No, not at this time, Mayor.
Are there other members of the council that have questions? Councilman DeCiccio?
Just a couple. You know, a lot of this was really put together by the Arizona Republic and their writings on this. And what they did is they took one phone call but didn't look at anything in the arrears. That's what I saw in the report, is that if you look from the presentation earlier today, a lot of this information, not always, because it takes time for it to develop out, occurs, you know, in a public setting, which occurred back in 2014. And can you repeat to me when the first concept of developing this property occurred back in 2014? Can staff give me that date when they think that occurred?
I believe staff, Mayor, Councilman DeCiccio, I believe staff said that occurred clear back in the fall of 2014.
Right. And then over time, there was public information out there. The newspaper basically is alleging, through others, but mostly them, because that's just how the newspaper Arizona Republic works lately, at least the ones that cover City Hall, that there was anything illegal conducted. I mean, that rises way above, I mean, that's just literally someone broke the law. Did anyone break the law that you saw?
Mayor, Councilman DeCiccio, based on the limited information that we were able to review, as I described, we did not find any evidence that the Councilman Nowakowski engaged in any conduct which violated the Arizona Conflict of Interest laws.
Or the City of Phoenix.
Or the City of Phoenix, which adopts the Arizona Conflict of Interest laws.
Because really, it was a broad brush across the City of Phoenix and the entire process. Now, if I could give a small commentary, I've always been critical of, the way we do procurement over time, but I don't think that, I've never seen the City of Phoenix break the law on anything when it came to that. I never saw it. And I thought that this rose to a higher level here, and that's what you're seeing here at this public meeting today. All right, thank you, Mayor.
Thank you very much. Are there any other questions by members of this council?
Mayor, I have a question.
Vice Mayor?
First of all, I wish I could be there in person. This is obviously a special meeting that was called, and I learned about it, I believe, on Friday. And rather than miss the meeting, I thought it would be best to call in for it. I still have not missed the meeting. I want to try to keep that move going in that direction. My first question is, we have this special meeting today. It's an information-only item. What's next?
Okay, I'm going to hand it over to maybe the city manager to answer that question.
Thank you, Mayor, Vice Mayor. So this meeting was called for information only. We will receive the information we get here today, and with that, staff will consult with the city attorney and make decisions about how to proceed with the RFP in the next day or so.
Vice Mayor, any additional questions?
No, Mayor.
All right, I'm looking to the rest of the council. Any other questions by members of the council? All right, the next portion of today's presentation was the opportunity for presentations by RFP respondents. Under that section of today's meeting, I have 3 cards. The first card is from Alyssa Thompson, representing Concord Eastridge, which I understand was one of the respondents to the RFP. Ms. Thompson, how much time do you think you need to make a presentation? I want to make sure I'm fair to each of the respondents and also fair to the council members in terms of their time. Is 10 minutes give you enough time for your presentation today?
10 minutes should, although Gretchen Wolf did indicate in an email to us that we had 15 minutes.
You have 15 minutes, and I apologize. I didn't mean to undercut Gretchen. 15 minutes it is. I apologize.
Great. To the mayor and to the council, I'm Elisa Cutright Thompson, and I'm representing the Concord Eastridge development team. Obviously, the local media and the real estate development community are closely watching this highly publicized controversy and how the city will handle this fairly for all responsive proposers. We're disappointed that there was such short notice of this meeting. Our principals would have liked to have been here. That said, I have a written statement from the principals of our entire development team that I'll read to you. We have a few points to offer your reconsideration of this important decision and future efforts for the city when offering its controlled property for development. By way of introduction, Concord Eastridge is a developer and partner in the successful Roosevelt Point project just a few blocks away. We know this area of downtown and have understood and invested in its future far before others have ever considered it for large-scale residential products. We understand downtown Phoenix and have had the vision to invest in it early on. In response to the Fillmore RFP, our team worked diligently to provide a built solution that would create a durable, vibrant community. In order to achieve that goal, the solution we designed and proposed includes a diverse range of residential product types, retail space, and even a potential elementary school. Further, we suggested resolving and improving the city's affordable housing assets adjacent to the site. To accomplish all of this, our proposal included for rent and for sale housing units and a broad spectrum of price points for both lease rates and purchase points. We did this because this is what it takes to create a thoughtful and highly quality community with permanent residents. This effort took considerable time and many forms of analysis, as well as substantial financial resources to craft such an integrated approach, one that is market responsive and deliverable in a very brief development cycle. We proved it to ourselves, and we hope to prove it to the selection committee. But our experience with the city process demonstrated a disconnect between these goals and the ultimate selection as published. Although our goals aligned with the RFPs and the previous planning study's desire for permanent residents, a thoughtful community development, the selection process demonstrates that the aspirations for the property and the RFP were not extended into the final scoring of the analysis of the proposals. In a 30-minute interview, very simplistic questions were asked. Follow-ups and/or conversation was not allowed. We were not allowed to use our full 30 minutes, nor even allowed a debrief, as we understand is the city's policy. And 30 minutes is simply too short of a time to review such complex proposals. Nationally, 1 to 2 hours is a minimum, but most are much more comprehensive reviews. This did not do any of our submitters' work any justice. So 30 minutes for a $130 million project. Further, the inconsistent scoring that has been publicly published demonstrates the selection panel members were not equipped to review these items or create appropriate priorities. Poor analysis of schedule, perceived land value, and urban form code responses were sort of equally rated, but are simply not equally important and certainly not determinable by the selection committee in that short of an interview. Our team was downgraded because we offered some for sale housing. Why? We carefully studied the market and did the analysis in the market that the market wants, and we wanted to provide the product in response to stabilizing the neighborhood and the community. The proposed finalist project does not conform to either the aspirational goals or the kind of planning that creates great communities. If final price and land was the ultimate criteria, the city should simply auction the land and avoid the neighborhood's input and other efforts it's made. Excuse me, let me grab. And avoid wasting time of developers and planners, and just sell to the highest offer. We hope that this is not the message you leave in your decision. Our team remains deeply interested in developing and providing great communities for Phoenix. Again, this same development team, just a mile away, developed one of the recent most successful mixed-use projects in downtown Phoenix when very few projects were turning dirt in the area. We came in on time and below budget. We hope you reconsider this process and all of the information and conversations that occurred before and after the project selection process. We wish we would have known. We ask that you close this selection process and re-procure the property under more specific terms of development or simply under an auction offer. The process we experienced to date has not accomplished the clearest path to either a great community or maximized sales transaction for this public asset. On behalf of Concord Eastridge, Butler Housing Company, the development team, Air St. Gross, Hardison Downey, MVE Partners, Dibble Engineering, PK Associates, Floor Associates, the design team, Cushman & Wakefield, Gammage & Burnham, and the Danter Company are consultants, which all consist of predominantly local teams. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your testimony. On the next speaker will be representing Deco Communities, Rob Lyles, followed by Nick Wood of Snell and Wilmer. And that's all the cards I have. All right, Mr. Lyles, up to 15 minutes as well. You have a PowerPoint?
Mr. Mayor, Council. My name's Robert Lyles. I'm with Deco Communities, and we are a partner in 5th and Fillmore Development Partners with Midwest Southwest Partners in Cleveland, Ohio. The main partner in Midwest Southwest Partners is the Weiss family. The Weiss family owns American Greeting Cards. It's the largest greeting card company in the world. They own it privately. And they have been my partner since 1998 in various deals. So we came together to form what we call a life cycle center. And what we mean by a life cycle center is we call it date, mate, marry, carry, and settle. The object here is to create an environment in different housing types where people can go in an entry-level multifamily building and stay there, and establish family units through the aging process. Our project consists of for-sale condominium units, for rent units, commercial space, retail space, live work, and then we have public green spaces and an urban paseo. We have 6 7-story buildings. It's 5 stories of wood frame over 2 levels of parking, and then we have 2 levels of underground parking here off a podium. We also have a combination of brownstone units and street-level retail that you'll see. Our building consists of 665 total units. Of that, 212 are entry-level condominiums. 159 are move-up condominiums. We have 294 apartment units in 3 separate buildings. Those being entry-level, market rate, and family units. We also have, let me back up a second. In the entry-level condos, the price point for those is $250,000 to $450,000. In the move-up condos, we're at $350,000 to $600,000. Okay? We also have a 1/4 acre commercial park and a full acre for our urban paseo to connect 7th Street to 7th Avenue and be part of the Taylor Street paseo. We have 26,000 square feet of commercial space. And we also have, which I think is very important, 1,494 parking spaces. When we did our neighborhood outreach and we talked to the people that owned the VIG and we talked to the Roosevelt District, we found out that the retail already in the area has created a parking issue. So not only are we 2 parking spaces per unit, we're also 1 per bedroom, and we have 108 excess parking spaces here to help lower the parking issues for the Roosevelt District. Okay? We offered $8.5 million for the project, and what we should note is that we are not requesting any city assistance or GIPLETs along with that. Okay? This is our ground level plan. If you look at the purple color, that's a retail. There's 19,000 square feet on one side. There is about 7,500 feet on the other side. That creates a good gateway piece coming from the Roosevelt District as it goes to downtown. We also have the green is the market rate apartments. The kind of orange are the entry-level apartments. And then all of the multifamily is on the east side of Fifth, or the top of the project here, the three different buildings. To the south is where we have all our for sale product. And so what you see at the ground floor wrapping the streets is you see our brownstone two-story product that wraps the streets in the first phase and the second phase buildings here. Now we're on the residential level, with the retail being underneath the piece across the street from Chibo and the Vig, but you can see the lighter yellow color, those would be our loft product. And then as we move back, the purple color becomes the entry-level condominiums, and they average about 1,200 square feet, okay? And then as you go farther to the south on the bottom field, you'll see our upscale or our upper-end condominium product, and they're going to average about 1,500 feet on average, okay? As you go to the north end, again, the green is the entry-level apartments. They're going to average about 850 square feet. As you go to the orange side, those are our entry-level. They're going to average about 600 square feet. And then the family units are the yellow to the bottom, which are going to average about 1,500 square feet. We also had a letter done by Elliott Pollock and Company, a study done to talk about the financial impact that our project would have on the city. And he said it would generate approximately $13.7 million through job, wages, and taxes. We also went to Jim Belfori and Company, and we wanted them to study the downtown marketplace for us and really check out what we believed was strong in the condominium market and the rental market. Currently, Deco Communities is doing 3 projects in Phoenix right now, the first one being Envy, which is a 8-story building in downtown Scottsdale, 3 levels of underground parking and 8 levels above. The price range there is from $400,000 to $1.4 million. We broke ground about 6 months ago. We'll have the structure completed by the end of the year. We already have 30 sales there in a non-refundable basis, averaging just under $500 a square foot. Okay, so we're currently building condos in the market today. Okay? This is Edison. Edison is at Monterey and Central, kind of across the street from Park Central Mall. Edison is 110 units. The price range there is going to be from $250,000 to $450,000. We break ground in 30 days. We've started to do a little bit of the groundwork there. We've opened our sales office, and we've been there about 45 days. We have 15 sales today, and that price range there is from $250,000 to about $450,000. So we're really happy with the progress. We're really bullish on the condo market in downtown, midtown and downtown Phoenix. Let me just talk about Deco a little bit. Deco's been around since 1998. We built about 3,000 condominiums in Phoenix, Scottsdale, Chandler, around the valley. We also, my partner and I, over our career, have been involved in about 15,000 apartment transactions. We recently, after the downturn, did a project or a product branded called Cabana. It was very successful. We have one of those at 16th Street and Thomas that has done very well. And we have 7 of those buildings in town right now. So we're very comfortable with a $185 million project, both with the multifamily knowledge we have as well as what we know about the condominium market. I talked about the Weiss family. We did, one of the things that we thought was very important if we're going to get around this is where's the money? And, this is a letter from Huntington Bank, which is one of the Weiss banking connections that has done over $400 million in construction debt for them. and is talking about another commitment for the same amount, which is far in excess of what this project costs. And also, we have a letter from KeyBank Capital Markets. The Weiss family took American greeting cards private a few years ago. It was a New York Stock Exchange company. KeyBank was involved in that transaction, and if you read this letter, it will state that they can easily cover the equity portion of this development, either with cash on hand or they could just declare a dividend to cover this transaction. So from a money standpoint, we're very comfortable with the project. I'd like to thank everybody for listening. Thank you so very much.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Lyles. Next, we're going to hear from Mr. Nick Wood. I think, Mr. Wood, your client is Trammell Crow, is that correct?
That's correct, Mayor.
All right, excellent. So Mr. Nick Wood will be next, up to 15 minutes as well. And then we'll see if any members of the council have questions for any of the respondents who were here today. Mr. Wood.
Thank you, Mayor and members of the council. My name is Nick Wood. I'm with the law firm of Snell and Wilmer. My address is 1 Arizona Center, and I represent Phoenix Fillmore Partners. Phoenix Fillmore Partners, of course, is made up of the Trammell Crow Company and of Cesar Chavez. Trammell Crow is the managing member of the LLC. It's a single-purpose LLC. Thank you. Single-purpose LLC. Trammell Crow controls 70% of it. Cesar Chavez controls 30% of it. A little bit about Trammell Crow. And my eyes aren't as good as they used to, so I'm going to use my thing to read from this. Just a thing about Trammell Crow. This year, 2015, here's the list of the top development firms in the country. Trammell Crow is listed as number 1. They have 32,100 square feet under construction. Value of assets under construction is $4,430,000, and they have a total of 114 assets under construction. The reason that they teamed up with Cesar Chavez is real simple. In January of 2014, almost 2 years ago, they teamed up for an LA project. It was called the La Plaza Cultura Village. It is very, very similar to the proposal that they submitted here. And it was an RFP, very similar to this proposal, very similar with respect to the mixed uses, but most importantly, it had the affordable housing component, and that's where Cesar Chavez brings their expertise. The RFP, I think, performed flawlessly. I think the system that the city has in place works. It works well. There are always people who sour grapes when they lose, and I mean that's human nature. And I'm not being critical. And, you know, we're all competitive, and we're all competitors. And you know, when we lose, it hurts. And you always take a look and see how you can criticize the process. But frankly, the process went along well. In fact, this process in particular was designed in a way to make it even better than the typical process that the city employs when it's trying to sell real estate. For example, here's the work that was done, and I think you heard from staff that this process began, well, you know, in 2014, before an actual proposal was submitted in the middle of 2015. You know, for example, on December 8th, there was a long article in the Business Journal. On January 5th of 2015, there was a presentation by Dan Clockey and the folks from Downtown Phoenix, Inc. Now, what they delivered really, and what they showed at this meeting, was a very well thought out vision process. They had met with a number of stakeholders, city staff, I mean, you name it, all through the year 2014, and came up with a number of different alternatives. Okay, different development standards such as densities, such as building heights, such as circulation, you know, street geometry, all these things to give the public, and more importantly, potential developers, an idea of what the vision of the city would be. So on January 5th, they had a presentation, same thing on January 10th. January 12th, they did a presentation to the village. January 27th, another neighborhood presentation, multi-housing family. They received a presentation in January as well. So everyone in the multifamily industry who's a member of this organization also had this information available to them. The Downtown Aviation and Redevelopment Subcommittee. Okay, I mean, Vice Mayor Valenzuela is part of that, Councilman Gates, Councilwoman Williams, and I think Councilwoman Gallego are members of that committee, and that presentation was made to them. In fact, there was a recommendation to go forward with the project. In February 11th, Churchill, another presentation, and then there's a long article in the Arizona Republic on February 11th. On February 26th. Phoenix opens a call for bids at April 30th. So by this time, the whole world knew about this project, and they understood what the vision of the city was going to be. On May 18th, there's a pre-proposal meeting. I'm going to come back to that in a second. That pre-proposal meeting invited all of the potential participants. It included 85 individuals and 55 different companies. Then on the 27th, proposals were permitted to submit a list of questions. Another option for questions on June 8th. June 30th was the deadline. The submissions were made. August 26th, Cesar Chavez Foundation and Trammell Crow were named as the recommended team to buy the development. And then on September 2nd, it's a typo there, I apologize. There was an opportunity for anyone who was unhappy with the process to file a protest. I mean, that's part of the process of every RFP. If you think there was something awry, that there was something inappropriate, okay, something that wasn't done correctly, that would jeopardize, really the trustworthiness, but more importantly, the integrity of the process, you file a protest. And there's lots of cases about it, et cetera. Now, you heard from our folks from Concord Eastridge, and they came up here and I guess they attempted to file a protest at this late date. What that tells me is by criticizing staff, by criticizing the panel, of really a blue ribbon panel of people, shows that they have little respect for the process because they just didn't follow it. So now they come here and they challenge it. Same thing with the presentation that you just heard from DECO. Okay, the process was you make that presentation. Now, they made it in 10 minutes. Okay? You make that to the panel, and then the panel makes a decision. They don't come here and try and make it here again. It's a lack of respect for the process. But we followed that process very closely. So everything was going along fine. There were no protests filed until October 2nd, 2015, when everything came to a screeching halt. And the reason was there was an article in the Arizona Republic, a very lengthy article. It was based upon innuendo, supposition, and a whole bunch of guesses and speculation. But the bottom line is there was an allegation, okay, that Michael Nowakowski broke the law. But I'm not here to defend Michael Nowakowski, but I am here defending my clients because my clients were also alleged to have violated the law by being a co-conspirator with Michael Nowakowski, obtaining information from him and incorporating it into our project in order to gain an advantage. I take that very seriously. Anytime anyone accuses my client of committing a crime, okay, I'm going to stand up and I'm going to scream to the rafters. So we, of course, went ahead and did our own investigation, and the city, you did the right thing as well. You hired someone else to do your own investigation. And lo and behold, no surprise, it was determined that there was no violation of the law. Okay, neither Councilman Nowakowski nor, more importantly, my clients were found to have done anything wrong. No proof at all, again, more innuendo, more supposition, more speculation, but no proof. But the important thing is, obviously, it does not affect the integrity of this process. Now, I want to talk about two things, if I may, and that has to do with what's at the heart of this newspaper article on October 2nd. And it really has to do with two events. One was in early March, when Michael Nowakowski picked up the phone and called Cesar Chavez organization and said, there's going to be an RFP, you may want to look at it. And that was found in the report and presented to you today. The other event was an April 6th meeting that Councilman Nowakowski had with representatives of DECO. So I want to talk about that for just a minute, both of those things, and talk about why they're not as important as people make them out to be, and why the findings of the investigator said that there was really no wrongdoing, and therefore the integrity of this RFP was not damaged in the least, and that you should go forward and accept the recommendation of the panel and of staff. So we go back to the same calendar I just showed you, where all of the pre-work was done by staff and by Downtown Phoenix, Inc. Then in red, you can see where in early March, that was where Councilman Nowakowski alerted his employer, Cesar Chavez Foundation, that the city would be selling a piece of land in downtown. Now, the reason I bring this up is when you look at all of the work that was done prior, It makes sense what you read in the report, and it was just a council member making a recommendation, whether it's somebody they have a relationship or not. All this information is public. It's no secret. So Cesar Chavez, of course, is in California. There's nothing wrong with calling him and doing that, and any of you would have done the same thing. And then the infamous April 6, 2015 meeting where Nowakowski met with a team of developers from the real estate firm of Deco Communities. Okay, now, apparently at that meeting, there was a disagreement with respect to, at least in the papers, there was a disagreement of what was said. Now, the report clarifies that, and it's changed, and I'll talk about that in a moment. But a couple of things about that meeting troubled me. One was, why would a potential proposer on an RFP, knowing that there's going to be a transparency clause where you're not going to be allowed to lobby anybody, why would you hire a lobbyist? And then why would you go and visit with the council member in whose district the property is located and talk to them? Knowing, again, that you really can't do any lobbying unless you're trying to get a leg up, particularly since they didn't come and visit any one of the members of the downtown subcommittee, particularly since none of the other 85 persons who participated in the pre-proposal meeting had any meetings with any council members at all. The second thing is, there was this idea that somehow, there's a problem because Michael Nowakowski is an employee of Cesar Chavez, and it doesn't matter that nothing came to the council for a vote, right, where he could have recused himself, and although he already has on record a statement that he has a potential conflict with respect to Cesar Chavez. One thing that was not in the paper, and even not in this report, was the fact that this meeting was done at the behest of Billy Shields, who is the lobbyist that Deco hired, and was at this meeting with Michael Nowakowski. One thing that was not in the papers was that Michael Nowakowski, knows Billy Shields very well. In fact, Billy Shields is a part of Cesar Chavez organization. Billy Shields is the chairman of the Cesar Chavez Arizona Advisory Board. So what does that mean? Well, in the papers it said that Deco was unhappy because it wasn't until there was actually an announcement by city staff that the Cesar Chavez Trammell Crow entity was going to receive a recommendation for the award, when in fact that's just not plausible. And the reason is that beginning on the pre-proposal meeting, which was May 18th of 2015, so it was before any proposals were going in, right? Here's the list of participants in that pre-proposal meeting. One is Cesar Chavez organization, and the representative from Cesar Chavez organization, and Deco is on the same page. Now, Billy Shields knows Cesar Chavez very well. So if Billy Shields didn't notice that they were participating there, we all know, and every developer does this, and I've been doing this for 30 years, when I'm involved in an RFP, right, with respect to zoning questions, what every developer does, they pick up this list and they look at it and they see who the participants are going to be, and then they do their homework. They're competitors. They find out exactly, they go on their website, say, what are you going to build? What are you going to develop? Well, if you go on Cesar Chavez's website or you go on Trammell Crow's website, you see that, guess what? They've worked together. And of course, Billy Shields knows full well that Michael Nowakowski is an employee, and he knew it then. But they didn't complain. They didn't raise any questions. I'm not being critical of them. I'm just saying that the idea that they didn't know just isn't plausible. Then, of course, but they didn't raise the question. Why didn't they call the city attorney's office? Why didn't they call Gretchen and say, you know what? We had a meeting with Michael Nowakowski last month, and we're about ready to submit a proposal. We think that there might be a conflict. Is he going to, do we have an issue? Never said. Then, of course, if you go back and you look at the list of the timing, there was an opportunity on May 18th and May 27th to submit questions. Again, no questions were posed. On June 8th, again, no questions were posed when another list of questions could be submitted. Then, once the award was announced, okay, they never said anything, but more importantly, within the 7-day period, they didn't file a protest. So here we are today, right, with a report from an investigator, as well as what we have found, but for the article on October 2nd, we wouldn't be here today. I mean, but had the article not hit the streets, you would have already probably acted on this, and more likely than not, okay, you would have gone with the recommendation of staff. But because the article came out, you did the right thing, and you said, look, we need to check this out, because if there have been laws broken, we have to scrap this thing. But now that we've found out that laws weren't broken, there is no proof laws were broken, okay, that the process was done appropriately, it was carried out the way it was intended to. You had great proposers. I mean, DECA was a very, very good company, as is Concord Eastridge. Okay? They all had great proposals, and we got the highest score. So the suggestion that you should somehow scrap the whole process and start over because of innuendo, supposition, speculation, particularly when there's an investigation that set it all aside, is I think, from the standpoint of fundamental fairness, it's not fundamentally fair. Okay, we played by the rules, we followed the rules, as did everybody else. Okay, this issue was not brought up by us, it was brought up by somebody else. Now, when you look at what was in the article and you look at what was stated, we have, comes from the report, no evidence that there was a violation of the RFP's transparency policy, no evidence that Phoenix Fillmore received confidential information or other favorable information unavailable to other bidders, no evidence that the councilman provided information about Fifth and Fillmore plans for RFP, and no evidence that the councilman or his affiliation with Cesar Chavez Foundation influenced the RFP criteria or the evaluation panels. So, in summation, if you decide to set this aside, if you decide to go with a new RFP, what you're doing is you are validating the claims, the allegations, okay, that have been proven false, that my client committed a crime and that Michael Nowakowski committed a crime. Because there's no other way, no other reason for you to say no, no other reason for you to turn this down and to scrap this whole deal unless you believe, again, you're allowed to believe what you want, and you know, you can take all the information and make an informed decision. But at the end of the day, if you scrap this, okay, the message is that my clients committed a crime, that somehow they were complicit with violating the law and therefore violating the integrity of the RFP. That's not only wrong, okay, it just simply would be an unacceptable situation for my clients. So again, I'm sorry I went over a couple of minutes, Mayor. I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Wood. I did note that there's one other individual not wishing to speak, marked in favor of the item, Alfredo Izmachtovich. I hope I got close to the correct name. You marked in favor. We don't have any particular action on today's agenda. I'm assuming you're in favor of what Mr. Wood was just stating? Correct. Okay, good. All right, so now I'll turn it over to members of this council. Any questions for Ms. Thompson, Mr. Lyles, or Mr. Wood? Council Waring?
Can I ask a question? City Manager?
Well, yes.
Thank you. So in the previous hearing that I attended with Councilman DeCiccio, I think your position is you could scrap, or whatever words Mr. Wood used, the RFP yourself. It would not be a vote of the council. He only referenced a vote of the council. That seemed to be in dispute at the last meeting. Legal counsel was there. I think Dan Brown was there. You know, he said this has been, I believe he told me, or I was told subsequently, this has been done before. Can you just elaborate on that? What you believe it kind of gets to Councilman Valenzuela's point about next steps.
I'll ask the city attorney to fill in, but it is clear in the RFP and in our practice in the past that staff has the authority to throw out the RFP at any point up to the council's action. Mr. City Attorney?
Mayor, Councilman Waring, so prior to 1954, the city had a form of government that involved a mayor and a commission. And at that time, the list of the council's duties included with respect to the sale of real property, and fundamentally, that's what this RFP is about, the sale of real property. It's specifically listed in item 42 in chapter 4 that the commission, referring to the predecessor to the city council, shall have the right to reject any and all bids with respect to the sale of real property. That was amended in 1954 when we changed the form of government. and it was eliminated, and all administrative power was vested in the city manager subsequently. That administrative power has been interpreted by prior city attorneys and by staff and by the city manager himself for a number of years to give the city manager the authority to throw out all bids. And consistent with the amendment to the charter back in 1954, I believe that's exactly the right analysis, that the city manager does have the authority to cancel the procurement, to throw out any and all bids, and then to reprocure. Ultimately, the City Council, of course, has the authority to accept or reject a recommendation by the city manager to award the contract when he's gotten to a point in the solicitation process that he's ready to make that recommendation.
Well,
That's good for me.
okay. Thank you very much, Mr. City Manager and our City Attorney. Any additional questions by members of this council? Councilman Williams, please. Of course.
More than a question, if that's okay, is that the timing? Go ahead. All right, I'm going
Why
to. Since I'm one of the ones that was on the signature to request this meeting, I just want to make it clear, I didn't do that to second guess the panel or the RFP decision that was made. I went far from that. I'm very concerned after I read the articles in the paper and the neighborhood people come to me and said, what the is going on at City Hall? And I was stunned when I had read that. I was very glad, Ed, that you hired an outside person to do an investigation. Because when any time, I'm very proud of the city of Phoenix. I have felt we were always responsible and lawful. I have never heard of a council person being accused of breaking the law before while sitting in office, and I was delighted when I had the results from the investigation, and I fully accept the results from the investigation. I will tell you, I have this written down before Nick made his statement, because my concern is I don't want this to become a process that people who are unsuccessful in the bid process take it as a mechanism to attack the council person and get a new RFP issued. I think that is a valid concern. I can see it happening. It is, politics are very ugly out in the community and around this country and around the world these days. And people tend to believe the negative before they believe the positive. But I think that Councilman Nowakowski did nothing wrong. I think the process was pure, and I do not support going back out in any fashion, because I think what's true, if it's fair, it's fair. So thank you, Mayor.
Thank you very much, Councilman Williams. Any additional questions by members of the council? Councilman Waring, please.
I'll just to follow up on what Thelda just said. So I also signed the letter asking for this special meeting. I already sat through at least part of this presentation once before with Councilman DeCiccio. When I first heard that Trammell Crow through staff, I think Penny Perella had sent us an email from Gretchen Wolf, I think it was. In any case, I had requested that we have this meeting then. I thought that was the appropriate way to deal with it. There's a lot of discussion out in the world. Obviously, you've referenced newspaper articles and so forth. I'm not picking any sides on any of that. I just think more information is better. We're council people. Maybe we should have another meeting. It turns out, and that was not, I didn't think, clearly communicated to me, although it might be my fault for misinterpreting. I didn't realize, I guess we were limited to having two-person meetings before this, unless we called this special meeting. So that I was surprised to find out at that first meeting, which we broadcast and it's taped and people can see that. So it was also a public meeting, much like this one, but there were only two of us. I was surprised to learn that everybody else wasn't going through the same process. So I thought that this would be helpful, obviously at the other companies' sides and points of view. I also felt that this meeting was particularly necessary after hearing that the city manager, that we were not ultimately necessarily going to vote on this, the city manager can make his decision. Again, you know the law better than I, you've got the case history, it sounds like there are examples, so I'll leave it for you and other lawyers to sort that out. But I did think it would be helpful, since Ed wasn't at the previous meeting, and he's the one going to be making a decision, the sit through this and I don't get to make the decision, at the very least, Ed should have to sit through it. So here we are and answer questions and so forth. So even though we're not voting, I thought this was a useful exercise. I assume that we're actually broadcasting this too. With the first meeting, I know it was taped and everything. So I just thought that this was helpful, even if it doesn't necessarily change the outcome. I appreciate your time and everybody who participated in this. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other questions, Councilman DeCiccio?
More statement than questions than anything else, because I think Councilman Waring and I asked just a ton of questions the last time, and we got a few more out today after the report was out. And I'll be, I agree with Councilwoman Williams on this too. I don't think that there should be any reason to rebid this, not from what we've heard today. That's what the whole process is about, is that it's supposed to give you the opportunity to look at all sides of it, hear from all parties, give those individuals their due process right. And let me be a lot more direct than Councilwoman Williams as I can be. She was nice about it, but really the only reason we're here today is because of that one story that started this thing off. It was akin to yelling fire in a movie theater. The one reporter is, I believe, to be sloppy. He didn't look at it. Dustin Gardner didn't look at the history. Bids are always problematic. They're always tough. I mean, you always have people that are not happy at the end of the bid, especially for something this large. I mean, this was a large bid. And that's just going to happen. But the problem is, you know, as a city, we and the private sector spent tens of thousands of dollars, so much anxiety, so much time on this because one reporter couldn't get it right. The report showed that it was right. I mean, the same reporters had issues I've seen before with plagiarism. He's had issues with, I believe, reliability, burning sources, which we saw here. But at the same time, the city of Phoenix literally took his article and ran with it, and that's what caused today. This is what's happening with the media, at least not just here, but maybe even nationally. It's just that we're taking these issues based on a story, because that's what it is, a story, because they only got half the story right. They didn't even go into the history of what occurred in the newspaper. So from my perspective, I believe that this is just, I'd like to build Arizona Republic. I think we need to, for the amount of money and time and effort that they've caused the citizenry of the city of Phoenix. It was clear that nothing was done wrong. There was a 29-page report on that. This is the first time, I believe, that a newspaper has basically alleged illegal allegations of illegal activity to either an they've done that to elected officials before, but it literally brought a complete blank carpet across the entire city of Phoenix because it alleged illegal activity from a major company. It alleged illegal activity of a council member and of the process and those involved in the process. And that's why we are here today. We're literally here today because of that story. I find it problematic. You know, everybody wants to hold elected officials accountable. Who holds the media accountable? You know, because the fear is this, is that if you do say things like this, like I'm saying here today, you're eventually going to get a bad story about you, or they're going to come after you. Remember the old adage, you don't argue with people that buy, ink by the barrel. Well, I think it's time to start doing that. The Arizona Republic knew this was wrong. They knew that they only had half the information. And now we cannot, as a city, abide by them running the city of Phoenix by this. It just can't happen like this any longer. It just can't. I mean, at some point, we've got to be able to look. If you look at the timeline that was up there, that was exhibited up there, it shows you the point by point by point by point, all the way through the process. That's a timeline. That is what you do when you're thorough. You look at the entire process. You can't look at just one side of the argument. So from my end, like I said, I wasn't going to be as nice as Councilman Williams was on it, but I think it'd be ridiculous for us to rebid this thing. I don't think it's fair. We've gone through a process. We've rebid other items before at the city. We've done that when we were able to hear it. We've heard that there's problems. We didn't hear any of that today. We didn't hear anything about anything that we read in the newspaper. Not one word was spoken today about all the improprieties. It's not there because there's nothing there. Thank you, Mayor.
Are there very much any other comments by members of this council? We do have one member of the public who wishes to provide input today on this agenda item. David Prom, did you provide testimony today? You'll have up to 2 minutes to provide that testimony. I have no other cards wishing to speak on the single item on today's agenda. If you're here to speak on that agenda item, please fill out a yellow card and it'll be submitted to me. Mr. Prom, please go ahead.
Thank you. Mayor and members of the City Council, my name is David Prom. I'm a resident of Phoenix. I am here today to speak on the Fillmore and 4th Avenue RFP. Excuse me, I'm very nervous, never spoke before. So, after many weeks of reading and watching the media reports on the issues, and after the release of the investigation report that reported no wrongdoing by council member or with the process, excuse me, I'm here to ask the council to support the RFP as it has been recommended by the committee, and rebidding of the RFP would be a huge cost to the taxpayers, and for what? The report finds no wrongdoing, so why would it be necessary to rebid? Further, since I am an avid and frequent watcher of Channel 11 and the aired city council meetings, I remember a few years ago when a citizen approached the city council and by charter requested that a certain item be added to the next available city council formal meeting. I am exercising the same right granted that day, and if I remember correctly, was discussed and clarified at the time of that meeting with the city attorney and council member DeCiccio, and determined to be legal and correct request. Because this meeting today is only posted for discussion and information, I am asking that this item be moved to the next available city council formal for discussion and action. As a citizen and taxpayer, we deserve to know if our elected officials are going to change the taxpayer or charge the taxpayers with the cost due to politics, or are good and sound business choices going to prevail. I would be happy to work with your staff on this issue of having this added to the next council agenda for action based on the city charter that was previously granted this request. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Prom. I'll turn to the city manager and make sure if he needs to do anything else to make that formal, that request, or that may be enough by itself by his verbal testimony, but please just make sure we work with him so that his request can be appropriately filed with the city. All right. Councilman, you have something, please, of course.
So you heard the request. How does that coexist with the concept that the city manager, by right or by contract, can throw it out?
Mayor, Councilman Waring, the city manager has the authority to throw it out. The request here under these circumstances would be secondary in priority to the authority of the city manager to do that. Of course, he can bring any other recommendation to the council in the future as well.
So just to be clear, if the city manager made a decision, so he's got his request in, but you're saying the city manager can still make that decision?
Mayor, Councilman Waring, yes.
All right. There being no additional comments by members of this public.
Mayor?
Vice Mayor?
I just have some thoughts.
Please.
They're not necessarily questions, but just some thoughts. I chair, as you know, obviously, you make the appointments. I chair the Downtown Aviation Redevelopment Subcommittee where the RFP originated. And downtown is important to all of us on the council. I think we all agree. This property, as we know, is the largest development deal in the city of Phoenix in the last 25 years. And it's important to continue the successful revitalization of downtown. Again, it's good for our entire city. I don't want us to forget that in all of this, in the controversy, regardless regarding this case, our ultimate responsibility to council and to the residents of the city of Phoenix is to get it right and to do all we can to drive our downtown and our city forward. I work in public service in multiple capacities, and one of the things I've learned, it is paramount for the people we serve to have full faith and trust in what we do, and what we do is in the best interest of the community, of the public. We have a great deal of integrity here at the city, from the very top with our city manager to every city employee to the policies and procedures we use to award major projects. I've defended our city employees in that process many, many times. I think the public feels the same way about the integrity as an institution. And I want the public to continue to feel the same way and to love this city as much as I love this city. And to ensure that continues to happen, we have to acknowledge that even if there's not overwhelming evidence that a law was broken, sometimes appearances and perceptions can shake the public's confidence in our government. I don't think the questions surrounding this are as simple as some today want to make it out to be. I, like everyone on the council, I'm sure, I read the report carefully. The information that has been made available is incomplete, which is what we heard again multiple times today. There are unanswered questions. Again, the law firm noted multiple times that they were not provided all the information, and based on that information, this is the result of that particular report. But I believe that's one of the reasons the public has concerns about this deal. Public trust is paramount, and the integrity in the process is paramount, and that's the first thing we need to ensure if we truly do want to get this right. So I appreciate the opportunity to join this meeting by phone. Like I said, it was created this meeting in very short notice. I didn't want to miss it, so thanks, for allowing me to join by phone. And I am, I'll, like everyone else, I'll wait on what the city manager decides to do moving forward.
All right, thank you, Vice Mayor. Thank you for taking the time. I think you're at the National League of Cities representing City of Phoenix. Thank you for taking time to participate in today's meeting via telephone. I'll now ask any other comments or questions by members of this council. This special meeting is now adjourned.